Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and in this video we're going to be restoring a Carver clamp. So what are Carver clamps? They are a rack style clamp with a fine adjustment on them for those that haven't seen them, and you'll get to see this one very shortly. For me, they're the last word in clamps. They are absolutely top quality, really good clamps, and used across a variety of different industries, but mainly welding. Welders tend to favour these. They're stupidly expensive to buy, so for this model that I've got, to buy a brand new one you're talking nearly £200 UK, so yeah, not cheap. In my apprenticeship these were used exclusively in the tool room and by all the local sort of tool makers, not just the one I worked in but other ones as well. Mainly on surface grinders where you're clamping, ground surfaces to angle plates or square blocks and that kind of thing for surface grinder setups, but also on other machines as well. So adaptable for machining as well as welding with a bit of work. And as I said, welders tend to use them predominantly, and this one's been used for welding and for joinery, and there's evidence of that on the clamp when we get it. So this is second hand. I paid £28 for it, which was a real bargain. Even second hand ones this size are going for £70–80, so I got this. So I was really lucky to get this. I put a cheeky bid on eBay and it got accepted, so we've got that here now, and I want to adapt this per my apprenticeship for machining use. So there's a bit of work to do, not only to restore it and bring it back to a decent state, but also a bit of work to do to the clamping faces to make sure that they're in a good state, ready for clamping finished machined work pieces without putting any damage into them. So with all of that being said, we'll come into the bench, we'll have a look at what we've got, and then we'll start the restoration. Okay, so here's our Carver clamp. So you can see there, this is a 150mm, or for our friends across the water, 6 inches. So it gives you an idea of size. And you can see on the spine of this thing, a double rack all the way down. We've got some spring steel in the back here. These are used with a thumb motion to slide these down to the right position on the rack, and then you just use the clamp here to do your final tightening. Fixed jaw, moving jaw that's also articulating, and what we can see on here is, obviously this is old, and those who know me really well will say, John, the only reason you want a Carver clamp is because they're the only clamps that you can buy off the shelf that come orange. Whilst I think that that's a good quality, that is not the reason that I've gone for this. We've got some evidence of welding on this, so you can see that this has been used for welding. We've got some build up a weld on this moving jaw here. It's all sharp and raggedy. The moving jaw's got a bit of a headache on this pin, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because it needs to comply, so I'm not intending to do anything about that. I think that'll be okay, but these surfaces all need cleaned up. And we've also got evidence of, whether you can see it, we've got varnish here. So, and various other places we've got bits of varnish. So this has obviously been used in a wood type application as well, I suspect. So that's what we've got for our £28. So really pleased with it. Apart from that, the rack all looks in good condition. The spring steel, whilst it's a bit corroded, has got plenty of spring left in it. The thread in here is in really good condition. There's hardly there's hardly any play in that, so that's in good nick, and the threads are all very nice, so that's all good. And then largely over and above that, just cosmetics really. So what we're going to be attacking here is the cosmetics, obviously clean up, and more than anything I want to sort these faces out here on both sides, so that we've got this good enough to be clamping onto either finished ground or finished milled or finished surfaces off the shaper, whatever. surfaces without putting any marks into them. So what we're going to do is start stripping it down, which is fairly straightforward. So we can take that out, we'll take the moving jaw off, we can pop the thread out of here, and all that's left really in here now is this jaw on here, which I'm not going to take off, and the spring steel, which I'm not taking out because that's riveted in place at the top here, so we're going to leave that in place, not doing anything with that. So our next job really is just some cleanup. So we're going to employ a wire wheel just to get rid of all of the muck and rubbish and old paint. It's got a bit of bend in it, not a huge amount, and I don't even know if this is going to show up on the camera. It does, I don't know if you can see, but the fixed jaw is just slightly cocked over at the bottom by a tiny bit. These things tend to do that a little bit over time, but it's not too bad. And they also are renowned for breaking across here if they've been abused, and sometimes you'll get one and you can see where it's been welded up or somebody's tried to repair it. In this case we're not dealing with that. This is a very standard straight clamp. So I'm going to get some wire wheel stuff set up and we're going to batter in and start cleaning this up. So we've just about done with the wire wheel. We've got pretty much cleaned up as much as we can with the wire wheel there. Interesting in doing that, we've now got some stamping that we can see with some paint and numbers on, made in England, that kind of thing. So we've got that on that side, and obviously the Carver logo on this side. So what we're going to do now, and I don't know if you can see it, but where the clamp screw bites into the back of the clamp all the way down, we've got some sort of damage which we're not going to get out, and there's no point trying to take it out, all the damage. But what we have got is some raised round that damage, some raised areas, and also on just some of the teeth of the rack we've got some slightly raised areas as well. I'm not going mad on this, I'm saying a restoration, but this is more about just making sure this is serviceable. So I'm just going to run along the edge of the rack with a fine file. Just make sure we take all those raised areas off the rack. That's not too bad at all, really. So there we go, that's cleaned all the raised material up on that back face. That feels nice. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the actual clamping face itself, which I'm trying to get the light on it so you can see, probably there. It's not bad, but it's certainly not good. So I'm just going to work around the edges for a start. Again, we've got some damage around the edges, so I'm just going to work around that with a file for a start. and we'll make a decision at that point whether we're going to do anything more drastic with that, such as put it up in the milling machine and just skim over, but I don't think that's necessary for what we're doing. So we're just going to work around here, clean the damage off. Okay, we've got our face probably as good as we need to get it. Just trying to get the light so you can see that. So we've still got some damage at the back here, but not too worried about that. The front 2/3 of the face are now nice and clean and nice and flat. So happy with that. There we go, got the light there in the end, so you can see that now. Happy with that. So all I'm going to do now is a tiny bit more very fine handwork just in this rack, just to make sure there's no loose flaky paint, which I don't think there is in some of these rack areas. So just a bit of scratching around with some emery cloth and some sharp implements just to go through that rack on both sides, and then I think we're going to call it a day for this piece, and we'll move on to the clamping part. Okay, so we're done with the spine of the clamp, and we're now going to move on to the moving jaw. So there's quite a bit more to do on this. I've got the same thing to do with this clamping face as we did on the fixed jaw. We've also got quite a bit of weld damage on here that we need to try and dress out and make that look decent. And we've also got, and I don't know quite what's happened here, if you look on this side, this is the original casting shape, so we've got this kind of a lip all the way around here. If we look on this side, it almost looks like somebody has built that lip back up with some weld, probably meaning to do something with it at some point, and never got round to it. I'm really not sure why that would be like that, but it obviously looks like somebody was trying to fix this up at a point in the past, maybe after hitting it with a grinder or something. I don't know. So we need to try and do something with this. I'm not sure whether a file's going to cut it. We might need to get this up in the milling machine just to tidy it up. I mean, it's only cosmetic, doesn't really matter, but whilst we're about it, we might as well try and make that as good as we can. And then the rest of it is all going to be the same as what you've already seen. Wire brush work in here to get rid of all the mess, and around the rest of it as much as we can, and some dress work with a file. And then I'm going to make a decision on, once it's all cleaned up, whether we do anything with this kind of headache we've got going on here or not. So I'll leave that till the very end, because if we do need to do that, that means grinding the head off this rivet, punching it out, putting a larger pin in maybe, and then riveting it back over again. I'll see if I think that's necessary or not. So I'm going to start with a file, and we're just going to start dressing some of these worst areas of weld up just to get it cleaned up a bit. Okay, we've done what I'm going to do to this. So we've tidied up that where that weld was. There's still a little bit of a wetness from it, but I'm not doing any more to it. So we've sorted that out. We've sorted this area out where all that TIG wore. I don't know whether it was TIG or MIG. I think it was probably TIG. It was quite neat. So we've filed all that up and just made that look as much like the original on this side as I can. So it's not too bad. Again, tiny bit missing, but it's all cosmetic. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the operation. What does matter is the flatness of this clamping face. So I've spent quite a bit of time draw filing and making sure that that's as good as I can get it, so it's not going to mark any of my parts that I clamp. So I'm happy with that. I was thinking of splitting this, but I'm just not going to bother. It's purely just for cosmetics and painting, and it's just, yeah, not worth it. So all cleaned up, all ready for a degrease and a coat of paint. Spent a bit of time on this spring. This was quite badly corroded, so I've got all of the corrosion off as much as I can off both sides, just to get rid of all the flaking sharp bits of rust and stuff. So that's all cleaned up. So the final bit is this bit, and these are quite clever and the way they're designed. So the thread's in excellent condition, both the male and the female. This bit here, and this is deliberately designed for welders, this clamp, and as you can see, as this goes in, what this bit here, so its normal working range is sort of from here onwards, and the whole idea of this bit here is a shroud to stop weld spatter getting onto the threads, which is a really clever design. So again, I could go to town and chop one of these ball ends off here, strip this, get it in the lathe. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to give it a bit of a tidy up with a bit of emery paper or something in the vise. Tidy this end up where it clamps, make sure that's clean, and then that's pretty much all we're going to do to that. So we've cleaned this up, just with, as you saw, just with some emery cloth, not gone nuts with it. Now originally I think this was black. It wouldn't be a chemical, well it is a chemical black I think, but it was probably nitrided as opposed to cold blued or cold blacked. So I'm just going to try it. We've degreased it. I don't know what material it is, so I don't know whether this is going to take or not, but we're just going to drop it in my cold blue solution and see whether we can take that back to somewhere near its original colour. Need to prop that up with something like this bit of a clamp. I'll just chuck the whole thing in, doesn't matter if the thread gets it. That is bluing already, I can see it. That's bluing quite nicely. So I'll bring you back when that's done and we'll have a look what we've got. So it's taken a more of a blue than a black, but at least somewhere near its original colour. So I'm not going to do any more with that. That's ready for reassembly now once we've got the rest of the clamp sorted out. Okay, it's time to degrease, ready for paint, and I've been waiting for this to come in to try. So this is gunk. I used to use some of this years ago in an orange tin, and it was for painting on motor vehicle engines, that kind of thing. This is in a spray form and it's for degreasing. So it's a biological, sorry, it's a non-bio, let me get that right, it's biodegradable, that's the right word. So it's not too bad for the environment. It's a spray on, wipe off, leave on for 2 minutes is what it says. Give it a good shake and we'll get stuck into it. So we'll leave that a couple of minutes, wipe it off, and then we'll get ready for our etch primer. So there's coat one, side one. I'm sure you don't want to watch any more of that. I'll bring you back when we're all painted up and we're doing the final assembly. There we go, that's got our clamp complete. I've not showed you all the painting or the reassembly because there's nothing to it. It's just slide the moving jaw back on and screw back in the clamp bolt. What I have done is chemically black the spring, because when we removed all the corrosion off that, it obviously went to bare metal, so we just chemically blacked that. Took a couple of minutes, and I've kept the jaw faces clean and ready to clamp finished parts. The paintwork's not superb, you know, it's a clamp. It's not. I've not put the effort in that I did when I restored my shaper. Just more of a bit of corrosion protection and to bring it back to its original colour. Unfortunately, I've got a tin of Kubota orange paint left over from doing the shaper restoration, which is the exact colour that these things are painted when they leave the factory. So I'm happy with that. That's now got me a Carver clamp that I can use on the shaper, on the surface grinder. Good jaws on it that aren't going to mark my parts, and a very good quality clamp that's going to come in very handy on most of the machine tools. So with all of that being said and done, I'll bring you back to the board and we'll close this episode out. Well, there we go guys, that gets us to the end of the restoration job on the Carver clamp. So not the most exciting of episodes, I grant you, but that is going to now come in very handy for machining setups, both on the surface grinder, on the shaper, and probably on the mill at some point. And I'm happy that I've got the surfaces in a good state for clamping finished machined components and surfaces without marking them, hopefully. So, and on top of all of that, I've saved myself about 175 quid, something like that, on the cost of buying a brand new one. So it's been well worth the few hours that I've spent putting into that to get that back to a decent state. So we'll call this video a wrap, I think, at that. So I hope you've enjoyed that, something a little bit different. I don't normally do restoration videos, but occasionally things pop along and you need to do them, so that was one of those. So thank you all very much for watching. Thank you to the subscribers and the new subscribers, and we'll catch you all again very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.